L'chaim, l'chaim. So it's Parshas Yisro. That's this week, and in Parshas Yisro, we read about how Yisro, or Jethro, his Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law, comes to visit him. He brings Zipporah. He brings Zipporah, Moshe's wife, and with her two sons, and brings them to Moshe Rabbeinu. Obviously, during the actual Exodus, during the Yetzias Mitzrayim, Zipporah wasn't there because the Yetzias Mitzrayim was specifically focused on the Klal Yisrael, and therefore the Makkos and the various issues that Egypt was going through was a danger to Zipporah and to the children. So after Yetzias Mitzrayim happened, after Kriyas Yamsuf happened, after the splitting of the sea, then Zipporah was Yisro brought Zipporah with him to Moshe Rabbeinu. And we read in the parasha, in the beginning of the parasha, especially that Yisro sees how Moshe Rabbeinu is basically running the show. And he says to Moshe Rabbeinu that there's a different way of doing it. You've got to make a pyramid, a hierarchy of the tens, of the hundreds, of the thousands, of the 10,000s. And Moshe Rabbeinu says, Yisro says, go to Hashem and go to God, go to Yud Kei Vav Kei, go to Hashem and ask God. And God says, listen to Yisro. Moshe Rabbeinu does it, and then the Torah portion goes on to discuss the 10 Commandments. So the commentaries ask that of all the Torah portions that we could have focused, we could have spoken about the 10 Commandments. Why is it Parshas Yisro? And not only why is it Parshas Yisro, why is the parasha named after Yisro? Who was Yisro? We know that Yisro, in theory, obviously we know him as Moshe Rabbeinu's father-in-law. But if we fast forward to Parshas Pinchas, it describes who Yisro was. What was Yisro? He was a fattener of cows. Meaning what? That Yisro was so knowledgeable in the various forms of avodah zarah, of pagan idol worship, that in theory he stood for everything against the oneness of God. It makes no sense that this individual who was effectively called a priest, the Medrash says that he tried every single possible avodah zarah. Over the period of his life, he was a priest. He had served every form of idol worship, every possible form. And yet, comes Parshas Yisro. Not only do we see that the Torah is given only once Yisro has actually come to the Klal Yisrael, come to the Jewish camp, but even the entire Torah portion, of which every Torah portion contains within it, the name of the parasha is the synopsis, is the shortened summary, the message of what that Torah portion is about. So how come a Torah portion which talks about Aseret Dibros, talks about the Matan Torah, giving of the Torah, be named after a pagan idol worship? So Medrash answers that Yisro by this point had done teshuvah, or not so much done teshuvah, but had rejected all forms of avodah zarah, which is teshuvah. At the end of the day, the idea of teshuvah is rejection of your previous ways of living. So Yisro had rejected all forms of avodah zarah, everything. And when he comes to Moshe Rabbeinu, he refers to Hashem by Yud Kei Vav Kei. He doesn't refer to Hashem by Elokeinu or Elokim, which is a symbolism of how God is within nature, how God controls the world through nature. But rather, he refers to God by Yud Kei Vav Kei, which is the name which supersedes all forms of natural process. What we call L'maylam Tampadas, L'maylam Istashos, higher than cause and effect, higher than cause and effect, higher than rationale and reasoning, higher than the process of spiritual, what's called the Hasidic evolution through the various spheres. Yud Kei Vav Kei supersedes all of that. And Yisro refers to Moshe Rabbeinu's God, or to the God of the Jewish people, as Yud Kei Vav Kei. So we see in that particular process that Yisro is effectively saying to Moshe Rabbeinu, I acknowledge Yud Kei Vav Kei as the God, not just the ultimate God, not the God of gods, which would be Elokim Elokeinu, which would be Elokeinu, with the God of gods, or Melech Malchei Amlochim, the King of all kings. Rather, he says, I acknowledge the Yud Kei Vav Kei. Go ask Yud Kei Vav Kei your God. And it's at that moment that the Medrash states that it's that moment that the purpose of why the Torah was given to the world, or the purpose of what the Torah will accomplish in the world, is summarized in. Because the purpose of the Torah and the purpose of why the Torah was given not just to the Jewish people, but given to the Jewish people in order that the Torah should be taught in the world, was that the world will come to a point of understanding that yes, there's avodah zarah, but avodah zarah at the end of the day is hevel havolim. It's nothingness. It's simply the point is Yud Kei Vav Kei. And so therefore when Yisro comes and concedes to Yud Kei Vav Kei, it's at that moment that the Matan Torah and Aseret Dibros is ready to be given. Because it is at that moment that the very beginning of the purpose of the Torah materializes. It's a beautiful explanation. Yeah. And obviously that's why we have Parashas Yisro. Yeah. Practically though, what's it for us? The reality is, yes, there's still avodah zarah nowadays, but the concept of godliness in many religions, you have the concept of godliness, you have the concept of worship of God. How do we apply this concept of Yisro now to us us right now? And the answer is that the concept of avodah zarah, the concept of idol worship, hasn't actually left us. And it's not simply referring to idol worship, in countries where there are idols. We're talking about literally the concept of where one takes an aspect of their life and they prioritize it over all forms of their connection to Hashem. Yeah. In business, cars, houses, money, music. The very fact that we call people idols in music, the very fact that we refer to different individuals as idols, that in itself shows that the concept of idol worship is still around us. And therefore comes Parashas Yisro, it comes and tells us again, or brings home the message that at the end of the day, these aren't the formats to which we are meant to be applying ourselves to. There are aspects in life. Money is important, a nice house is important, a car is important, being healthy is important. But when they take priority in your life and become the sole focus of everything that you want to stand for, then that has become your new form of idol worship. And therefore, if Yisro, who was the ultimate priest, the ultimate individual who served every form of idol worship, if he was able to come along and say, you know what, no, it's Yud Kei Vav Kei, then how much more so we in our lives, when it comes to when we serve concepts in our lives which take priority, Yisro tells us, if I can do it, you can do it. Reprioritize, reconnect, begin to refocus on how God, spirituality, it should be the focus. So l'chaim, each and every one of us needs to find an aspect of our lives which we perhaps prioritize a bit too much, which we idolize a bit too much, which we focus a bit too much as our entire world revolves around, and perhaps shift that energy, shift that focus onto a bit more spirituality, a bit more holiness, a bit more connection to how we can bring Yud Kei Vav Kei, how we can bring a spark of godliness into our lives on a practical and tangible level. L'chaim.